Enough with the careless, disgusting media commentary. Seriously. I've played it for you over and over and over again. And it's wrong. And they make him into some kind of, second coming of the devil, this, that, and the other, and have compared him with the worst people in all of history over and over and over again. You know who's very guilty of this? MSNBC, including their morning show run by Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough. Joe Scarborough, who just attacks him nonstop. Well, somebody over at Comcast has had enough. Probably the CEO, Brian Roberts, who's a little more down the middle than anyone over there in Lefty. Guess what? The bigwigs pulled the plug on Morning Joe, at least for now. There was no Morning Joe on the air today. Now, you can't tell me that they were on vacation on the starting day of the RNC. There's no way they were on vacation. But they may just be on vacation all week. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I think it would be the right move to do as an executive. In other words, you can't be tone deaf right about now. And you got a team there that is problematic. Now, the word on the street is, well, they weren't so concerned about Mika and Joe. They were actually mostly just concerned about the guests. Well, let me tell you, that's a bunch of BS. Look, I've worked in television. They were concerned about Mika and Joe. And the fact that Mika and Joe maybe were not willing to cancel certain guests. Because what do? If you're worried about a guest, you cancel them, for goodness sakes. You don't need them. Why would you fill your guest list with people that were going to maybe take you down a rabbit hole on a day when you don't want to go down that rabbit hole? You got some control over that. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is quite telling. They were worried about Mika and Joe and what they might say and how they might inflame this situation. I want to go to our friend Steve Krakauer, who is a media reporter and went on to News Nation to talk about this very issue just moments ago. Let's listen to him.
Weekend on MSNBC were stopped, right? So there was no Jen Psaki show or others that yesterday. They removed them in favor of covering the breaking news, which I think makes perfect sense. But that is completely different than going on, as you mentioned, the flagship show, Morning Joe, now responsible, was on the air for 4 hours, is actually technically responsible for the hour even before it goes on, a 5-hour block of programming that reportedly, based on CNN and other reporting, they don't trust. And you mentioned the guests. As they have got 24 guests, but they didn't necessarily say just that they don't trust the guests. They don't trust necessarily the hosts, Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, not to say something wildly irresponsible that may smear or tarnish the reputation of the entire program and then the entire network. That speaks, and yes, it's breaking news. Obviously, an assassination attempt on a former president and the current nominee is an enormous breaking news story. But if you can't trust Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski to lead a news coverage of that, what does that say about the program itself and the network itself, which every night when it comes to breaking news or a big political night and primetime is led by its opinion hosts as well. So I think this is enormous right now.
So why isn't it just enough to have it on delay, 5 seconds, 7 seconds, something like that? If it's, you hit the alarm bell, you hit the red button.
I think it's an admission. It's an admission of something significant here, that when the stakes are high enough that the adults in the room get involved. There's reporting that Cesar Conde, who is like the big boss of MSNBC and NBC and a nearly Comcast level place, is getting involved in this sort of decision making to say, wait a second. What are we doing here? Do we trust the people that we have normally manning the ship when politics is all fun and games to also cover what is an incredibly important story? I heard Bill O'Reilly on here talking about how grateful he is to be involved in News Nation and how that's a model. I think that's true. There is a media apparatus that's been existing for a very long time, but certainly in the last 8 years since Donald Trump got on the stage, it's really about covering politics as entertainment.
Steve's right. In other words, there's no journalism there. I mean, you watch Rachel Maddow. Gosh, I used to watch this in the competition monitors when I was at Fox. You'd have like a bunch of monitors up while you were even live during the show. And I'd look at some of her lower thirds, the things that they would put the graphics on the bottom of the screen. I'm like, oh my goodness, this woman, like she's kind of nuts, right? Like she's crafting together some kind of elaborate conspiratorial kind of story. And why would she do this? Because she's highly irresponsible in doing so. There's no journalistic integrity going on. She's doing it for ratings, ladies and gentlemen. It's all about getting the moolah in the door. And she's been successful at that. And Morning Joe has been successful at that. And then it's kind of fed upon itself. And they go with these narratives that are very, very anti-Trump and very destructive. And at what point do you say, okay, this is actually pushing things too far? And so you get some 20-year-old nutjob kid out there who starts believing all this and thinks, oh, if I can go back in time, if I could have changed history by doing this, that, or the other. I mean, it's scary to even think about, but this is the kind of stuff that actually contributes to it. In other words, Morning Joe and the rest of those programs on MSNBC need to be a whole lot more cognizant of what they're doing. And if they can't be more cognizant, they shouldn't be on the air. So you know what? Cesar, who's running the NBC News division, and Brian Roberts, who runs Comcast, you're doing the right thing. You got to clean this place up, and you got to clean it up fast.